Just 1 week after shocking the college football world, the Vanderbilt Commodores return to the field as they take on the Alcorn State Braves. We are here previewing, predicting, breaking this down as the Doors and Braves do battle in Nashville. Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Phillips. He's Dave Shumate. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Make sure you like, subscribe, turn notifications. Check us out via podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find us across all social media platforms, as well as our website, SECUnfiltered.com. This segment brought to you by our friends over at MyBookie. Go to mybookie.ag. Use promo code SECU at sign up to receive a special welcome offer on your first deposit. Again, guys, that's mybookie.ag, promo code SECU to get your special welcome offer today. Just 1 week after Vanderbilt shocked the college football world and took down the Virginia Tech Hokies, they welcomed the Alcorn State Braves as the folks in Nashville look to move to 2-0 early in this 2024 season. We are here previewing, predicting, breaking down this game, and helping me do so is my good friend, as always, Dave Shumate. Dave, what's going on, my man? I appreciate you taking the time.
It's an honor, man, to break down, get on here, talk a little Vandy football. When they're on top of the standings right now, baby. They're in better shape than LSU right now. They're in better shape than the Gators and the Aggies. Nashville, I don't think they've stopped partying since Saturday around that afternoon after the overtime win around 3:30.
Dave, if anyone out there ever questions SEC Unfiltered's love for SEC football and commitment to the craft, look no further than this Vanderbilt Alcorn State preview. Dave, a lot of folks out there talking Texas, Michigan. A lot of folks talking NC State, Tennessee. There ain't many of them talking Vandy and Alcorn State, damn it. But we are, and we are excited to do so. Again, a 7:30 p.m. Eastern time kickoff at First Bank Stadium there in Nashville. Dave, this is the ESPNU game, so they're not even SEC Network Plus. They're actually on TV. They're on the U, baby, ESPNU. There's no line in this one. These two teams, Dave, have never met, and if they had, I couldn't find the last meeting. So we're just going to assume they have not played each other. Apparently, they've played a lot in basketball, though, so that's kind of a fun fact for you. The Braves are 0-1 on the season, lost to UAB 41-3 in their season opener. Their head coach is Cedric Thomas. Dave, they were actually picked to win the SWAC West, so a fairly decent team in the SWAC, at least. 2 players selected the preseason all-SWAC team, that being tight end Tavarius Griffin and defensive lineman Malachi Bailey. And something I thought was interesting, Dave, they featured 3 quarterbacks in their first game against UAB. Roderick Hartsfield, Tyler Macon, and Xavier Vaughn. So as we dive into this game, Dave, you know, it's not very often, Dave, do we look at Vanderbilt and say, not necessarily get right game because you won in week 1, but this is a game where Vanderbilt, they should be able to go out there and do what they want to do and win. And those games are few and far between for the Commodores. But, Dave, the thing I'm really most interested in with this, Vanderbilt shocks. I mean, there was nobody picking Vandy to beat Virginia Tech. This is a Virginia Tech team people thought some people thought they were going to make
had the most production back in the ACC.
Had the most production back. You beat them in overtime, 34-27. You look pretty good doing so. The week after stunning Virginia Tech, Dave, you know this as well as I do. You've been in the building before. The way you respond after a loss is important. The way you respond after a big win, though, is also very important. So I'm curious to see how Vanderbilt builds off the big week 1 win. To your point, are they still partying? Are they still like high off the Vatek and they kind of forget to get ready for Alcorn State? Or does Clark Lee and company have their crew ready to go and they handle business? I mean, I think that's probably the top thing you look for because Vanderbilt, even being Vanderbilt, they've got SEC talent. They should be able to take care of business. But how do you follow up that big win against the Hokies?
Yeah, I mean, especially from a team that hasn't experienced a lot of wins, too, and under Clark Lee. And that's not a shot to Clark Lee. I think it's the hardest job in college football right now when you factor in who they play, NIL, just the academic standards to get into Vanderbilt. Again, like you said, how do they bounce back against an Alcorn State Brave team coming in 6:30? I mean, you would assume it'd be a decent crowd, at least from the Vanderbilt side, with some momentum carrying over. So like you said, are they focused this week? Or like continue? Probably they have stuff they got to fix. I'm sure. I can't name it off the top of my head, but they have some things they got to fix. I'm sure Clark Lee would be the first one to say it. So that's something they need to lock back into and make, hey, you know what? Like, we didn't come here just to beat Virginia Tech. We're trying to get to a bowl game here. and Alcorn State is the next team in our way before we kind of get slowly. Then we got Georgia State. Speaking of the Braves, they go to the Braves Stadium the old Braves Stadium next week at Georgia State, and then they get at Missouri is the first conference game. So they're dying to get into conference play at 3-0, and then obviously work their way later in the schedule. They play Ball State and try to go 4-0 in non-conference. Like that's every year Vanderbilt's going to have to go 4-0 in non-conference to get to a bowl. I think that feels pretty most years. But this is the next step. You got to go beat an Alcorn State team. You got to show some maturity as an overall team when you're bringing in some newcomers, especially a bunch of guys, even the OC coming over from New Mexico State. Let's show some maturity. Let's bounce back, figure ourselves out. Yeah, we should win this game, guys, but good teams go and handle business, take care of teams. They're much better than Vanderbilt, I think, is much better than Alcorn State, especially when you factor in the X factor of our guy, Diego Pavia. It was funny. We talked about it going into the season that he was like, dude, this guy could be kind of an X factor. I think I predicted he'd lead them in rushing. You let him on rushing on Saturday night, Willie for the rest of the season. I mean, they do have the Cedric Alexander running back. It's a pretty good player too. But I mean, tip of the cap to Clark Lee. I mean, Vanderbilt has to be different. They do because they're not going to have the personnel to go beat teams in the SEC. So while everybody else is zagging, you got to be zigging. And they're essentially running somewhat of like a triple option offense to an extent right there. It makes them hard to prepare. You don't see that all the time week to week. So, but to your point, they just got to go handle business, take care of themselves, get a win, then go get ready for Georgia State before conference play starts.
Dave, you hit the nail on the head. When you're a school like Vanderbilt and in the SEC, you're either going to be better than, less than, or different than.
Yeah.
And at Vanderbilt, you got to be different than, because you're not going to be better than very often. You're more often than not going to be less than. But you got to be different than. And there's other schools in the SEC that this rule applies to them as well. But to your point, Dave, how cool is it that, I mean, Diego Pavia, the legend of Diego Pavia, he's kind of made Vandy like must-see TV. Like I'm curious to go watch the highlights. They're like, what did Diego Pavia do this time? You know what I mean? Like the legend of this kid. He beats Auburn last year, right? At, what was it, New Mexico State?
Yeah.
And then he beats Vatech in his first game in Nashville. Like, what? This kid.
This is his last two Power 5 teams?
I mean, it's crazy, man. So I think, Diego Pavia, he's made them somewhat a must-see TV, continue to build chemistry in the offside. Quincy Skinner had a nice game in game 1, too, building that chemistry with him. I forget the other wide receiver's name. The kid's slipping my mind. But they got a couple weapons on the outside. And, again, Skinner was one that impressed me. And then defensively, man, Clark Lee's defense. Safety play.
Play calling, yeah.
Safety play was good. They were active up front. I mean, and you mentioned, Dave, like the biggest thing. Building off week 1 against Virginia Tech. I'm going to call them Vatech because they got upset about that. And you know what? You haven't earned the right for me to not say that. Building off that momentum, you should take care of business in this one. At Georgia State could be tricky. That's why I think it's important to play well in this one, feel confident. You should probably win, but Georgia State.
First road game.
It's at Turner Field, like you mentioned, the old Turner Field. But, Dave, if you can build some momentum, I'm not saying they're going to beat Missouri. Please don't quote me on that. I'm not saying that. But you're 3-0 going to Como. I mean, crazier things have happened, Dave, like New Mexico State beating Auburn with Diego Pavia. So, I mean, I'm just saying it's an opportunity for Vandy to continue to build momentum and, build off that Vatech win the right way. And, man, it's crazy. Diego Pavia has really made them must-see TV. It is really cool to say that.
No, you're right. That would be quite the buzz for the Clark Lee Vanderbilt program if they're undefeated rolling into Como.
Dave, I'll tell you this right now. They're 3-0 rolling into Como, and they've played well. We're going to hype up the hell out of that matchup.
I don't give a damn. That week, baby. Week 4, you'll see him in Como.
Right. Yeah, I don't know about that. But no, it's a great opportunity, man, again, to build that momentum. And it's Vanderbilt's a fun story right now, man. And I think we should all embrace that because that hasn't been the case much over the last couple of years. Dave, let's spare the rest of the dramatics. Let's get into the prediction for this game. Again, I don't think either of us they're playing the Alcorn State Braves, not the Atlanta Braves. I don't think either one of us is picking the Braves to pull the upset. How do you see this one playing out Saturday night in Nashville?
I could see Vanderbilt start. I mean, you tell me if I'm wrong. I could see Vanderbilt coming out a little slow out of the gates. Like me and you talked about, just the focus level of coming in. That's why if you're Clark Lee, you're promoting the hell out of them. Hey, people, come back. I know we beat Virginia Tech. It's going to be cool to tweet about, like, actually come to the game and stay. Like, my team needs some momentum to build off of. There's not going to be the juice that Virginia Tech fans probably helped bring because they were in town too. Like, no offense, the Braves, to Alcorn State, the Fighting Steve McNairs, they're not going to be bringing a ton of people except the parents. But you need some energy to help get your team fired up when they roll out there for pregame warm-ups. It's like, all right, yeah, this is the kind of buzz we create. But I could see them starting off a little slow, but ultimately they're going to end up winning this game. I think it's going to be something like, I'm going to say 38-7 Vanderbilt. Probably not as sexy as you're hoping for, but again, I could see them being a little sleepy in this game because that was the biggest win of the Clark Lee era by far. That win over Virginia Tech in his time in Vanderbilt. So I think a little sleepy win, but again, nothing you're never really concerned about if you don the old black and gold. But give me 38-7 Vanderbilt.
Dave, I'm going to go 45-10 Vanderbilt. I think the legend of Diego Pavia, a little higher score. I think Diego Pavia is going to cook. I'm a believer in Diego Pavia, man. He can do it all. He can throw it. He can run it. Their success is probably going to hinge on him. And maybe Cedric Alexander gets going a little bit in this game. But, dude, I think Vandy puts up a 40 bomb and takes care of their business. And to your point, they could start a little slow. The boys have probably been hanging out on Broadway a little bit too much this week. But I think they'll get their asses in gear and handle business. And the hapless Alcorn State Braves, who I'm sure will have a great year in the SWAC, but this is not the game to have a good game.
I saw in our note, they're projected in our notes to win the West in the SWAC.
Well, they were picked to win the SWAC West. But I mean, Dave, to your point, we've seen an SEC SWAC matchup, Arkansas and Pine Bluff.
Yeah, Alabama, A&M, Auburn.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, those were 70-0, and I think 73-3 were the finals in those.
Poor Pine Bluff. They were starting
Poor SWAC. Poor SWAC.
Poor Pine Bluff was sitting there starting a 6'2", 270-pound left tackle, baby, against Landon Jackson.
Against Landon Jackson, yeah. So, I mean, again, how many conference games is Vandy going to win? Heck, I don't know. They might win a couple. They might not win any, but they're going to beat Alcorn State like a drum. So, I got 45-10. You've got, what was it again?
38-7.
38-7. So, we've got Vanderbilt moving to 2-0 and being one game away, Dave, for those that care, from hitting the over on the preseason over-under total, which was at 2.5. You got to feel pretty good about that number at this point. So, anyways, the battle in the West End between the Commodores and Braves, we both got Vanderbilt rolling. Guys, do you agree with us? Do you disagree? How do you see it playing out when Vanderbilt and Alcorn State do battle on Saturday night? Guys, that's going to do it for us. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Make sure you like, subscribe, turn notifications. Check us out via podcast, wherever you get those as well. You can also follow us across all social media platforms as well as our website, SECUnfiltered.com. Until next time, guys, for Dave Shumate, I'm Chris Phillips. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in, and we'll catch you on the other side.